Okay, Agadta everyone. As we welcome in Saba and Stephen Holtzman, Shimon Klein, Menachem Umansky, Mark Frankel, Irving Fishbaum, Mordechai Sultan, who gets a Mazel Tov for a grandson, Mazel Tov, Nachman Chapler, Shelley Zeitlin, Dr. Guy, Yitzi Muller, Dr. Block, Baruch Ian, Michael Agadta, Mo Kushner, Aronson Kletzel, Dr. Eisenberg, Dr. Eisenberg, Gemora Chasima Tova. I know one of your commitments is to come more often next year. I know it. I don't have to. You don't have to tell it to me. Aaron Swade, Moshe Lehman, Gedalia Engel, Avram Schenkman, Ilya Shutman, Chaim Braun. David Helfgott is joining us. Mark Rattenstein, very good to have you. And here, holding the fort here tonight in the shul here at Agadta Shul, Beisev of Fairways is Berish Gesserman, and we are learning, sponsored by Baruch Ian and family, Le'ilui Nishmas, Esther Basyoni, Yaakov Chaim Ben Abba, Avram Ben Shmuel HaKohen, Lefush Shalem for Baruch Avram Ben Esther, and Baruch Shalom Ben Lina. Aaron Swade, Le'ilui Nishmas, his first Rebbetzin, Chana Bas Shmuel, and for his sister, Freda Bas Shol, by Shimon Klein, by Shimon Deer, for the Kiddushin Daf and Kiddushin Yisrael, for Mark Frankel, the Fush Neiman, for Miriam Sarah Bas Zipporah, Chana Bas Gittel Esther, by Beir Goldwasser, by Akar Satay, for what Hashem did for his family, and for the Kiddushin Yisrael. We learn the Fush Neiman for my Shver, Avigdoraya ben Rivka. We learn the Fush Neiman for Meir ben Chayesara. We learn the Ili Nishmas, Marshall Castle's brother, Mordechai ben Aaron. We learn I was asked by Irving Fishbaum to learn Lili Nishma Shmuel Aryeh ben Binyamin that just passed away. His neshama should have an aliyah. We also learn for Yehuda Cyril Bas Miriam. And now we begin a fascinating, and I mean fascinating, as we welcome in Yehuda from Yerushalayim, and we welcome in the Zeno family, and David Silverman. We have to see you this year, Tavshin Pei Dalet. David Silverman, we have to see you more often, and maybe, just maybe, we could convince you, cajole you, twist your arm to come on our Zoom family by going to zoomdaf.com and joining us. We begin remarkable to close out the first parak. Boy, will we miss the first parak of Kiddushin. We close it out, learning to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Dibarta Bam. Lasois nachas ruach liyotzreinu. Please Hashem, give us a good year, a chasima tova, that we should, a chasima of schusim and chayim and mesikas and menuchas hanefesh, that we should be able to learn every night as we start tonight the second half of Shas. Starting tonight the second half of Shas, Hashem, please help us finish Shas in Gesund with great camaraderie. We are holding by Giborei Koyach 4 lines from the top of Daf Mem Amalav. Richard Rosenzweig is joining us, and we hope that he gets his computer fixed, that he can join us on Zoom. The Gemara tells us, Giborei Koyach, mighty strong people, Oisei Devarai, who fulfills Hashem's word, Lishmoya B'Kol Devarai, to listen to the commands of his word. Now, when it says Giborei, that means that they're people that exercise might in the fulfillment of the mitzvah. Kigain Rabbi Tzadok v'chaveirav, like Rabbi Tzadok and his colleagues, that show tremendous power to overcome temptation. What does it say? Ezo Gibor HaKovesh es Yitzray, one who conquers his passion. So the Gemara says, Reb Tzadok Tovase Ahi Matronisa. Reb Tzadok was solicited by a Roman matron, a very pretty woman. So Amal La, he said to her, this was also a very powerful woman, so he couldn't just, run away. She could have killed him. So he said to her, Chalish li liboy, my heart is weak, v'loy matzina, and I don't have the strength without first eating something. You have something that I could strengthen myself with before I am with you. Amalei, so she said, look, ikadvar tame. All I have is some boar's head. All I have is some swine. Amalam, so he said to her, look, my nafkamina, the avid ha, if I'm going to be with you, achal ha, I might as well eat pig. So Shagris Tanura, she wasn't going to serve it to him cold. She lit up the oven and kamanchale, and she put the meat into the oven. So Salak v'yaseh b'gaveh, he went inside and went into the oven. Amalei, so she said, shocked, my hi, what are you doing? Amalah, so he said to her, the avid ha nafal b'ha, if I'm with you, I'll fall into Gehenna. Amrulay, so she said to him with an epiphany, with true realization. Iyode kulai, if I knew it was such a serious thing, lo yitzarticha, I wouldn't have put pressure on you. And she let him go. He had to go into the oven to get this. Rav Kahana, now here, when it says Rav Tzadok and his colleagues, when we hear the name Rav Kahana is mentioned a lot in Shas. When we hear the name Rav Kahana, we should reflect on this story. It's an amazing story, what our great ancestors were willing to do not to sin. Rav Kahana have a kamazvin dikule. He would sell baskets of makeup. He sold makeup. So because he had to deal with women, he was solicited by a certain very beautiful woman. And he felt that he was going to succumb. So Amallah, so in order to buy himself time, he said, look, I'm not presentable, I have to take a shower. So Ezel ikshit nafshoy, let me go and make myself handsome. Salak, he went up to the roof, the kanafel me igralar, and he threw himself off the roof. In order to escape from the sin, he actually threw himself off the roof. So As Eliyahu Kable, before he landed on the floor and got killed, Eliyahu came and made a catch, caught him. Amalei, so Eliyahu told him, you troubled me to go out of my way for you. I had to come 400 parsois. That's 1,200 mil. I had to come in order to catch you. Amalei, so he said, me garamli, what caused me that I should be prey for these women? Lav aniyusa, it's my poverty that I have to go out and sell makeup. Yovle shifa didinre, so he gave him a chest of coins that he didn't have to do it anymore. But the might, this is a mussar for ourselves now. Right before Yom Kippur, we're thinking about, strengthening our resolve in being stronger and not looking at things that we shouldn't look at on our phone, on the computer. Our sight shouldn't wander to immodest things. So we know it takes koyach. I say davar lishmaya bekel davar. So now the Gemora goes back to what we said, that there are mitzvahs that we have the dividends in this world. So says the Gemora, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. Let me say, for the record of how wonderful it is to have all of you wonderful people for the shiurim night after night. I really am appreciative to all of you. 4 lines from the intermediate lines on Daf Mem Amud Aleph. What better thing could we do with our life on an Erev Yom Kippur than to learn Daf Yomi? What? Can't think of anything better. Ramalei Rava l'Rav Nachman. Rava asked the contradiction to Rav Nachman. Tanan, Elu devarim she'adam isa isan. These are the matters that a person does, and he has its dividends in this world, and he keeps the principles for the next world. Elohein, kibbud av aim, honoring parents, gemilas chasadim, kindness, v'avos shalom shebein adam l'chaveira, making peace between man and his fellow, v'talmud Torah keneged kulam. So the Gemara says, how do we know that these are both in this world and the next world? So the Gemara is going to present to us that the psukim are two parts. So it says the Gemara, kibbud av aim. How do we know that it's true for kibbud av aim? Ksiv laman yarichon yamecha or laman yitavlach. So yarichon yamecha in this world and laman yitavlach in the next world. And by acts of kindness, if a person pursues charity and kindness, he'll have life in the next world and tzedakah v'kavod in this world. So it also uses the word redifa to pursue it, and we learn how to gzeir shavav. Asi redifa. We learn how to redifa from Gemilas Chasadim. Ksiv hacha bakei shalom v'ratfeu, seek peace and pursue it. V'ksiv hasam roidev tzedakah v'chesed, yamatzei tzedakah chaim tzedakah v'chavod. By the way, when it says to be bakei shalom, there are people that say, look, you know what? He's a tough individual. I won't have anything to do with him. We'll live and let live. That's not a bakei shalom. That's a madrega. But it's not a bakei shalom. Bakei shalom says, let me figure out how to get along with him. Like it says, Eizo Gibor, it's a Maimin Avos Reb Nasan, Eizo Gibor ha'isa misaynai ayavai. It's interesting, I just saw a letter that was, he comes on sometimes here to the Zoom. I have a Talmud in Monticello, New York. And it's interesting, I used to give, between Mincha Marv, a share sometimes in the Monticello shul, in Monticello, and he would come, and he was attracted to my share, and he started becoming a subscriber, and he's a subscriber of my shir for many, many years. His name is Alan Barish. So I just read it tonight. It was there's a group about the Catskills, over the years. I've been going to the Catskills for half a century. So he was reminiscing when he was a busboy in the Kutcher's Hotel. The Kutcher's Hotel is now defunct, but it was one of the last holdouts upstate. So he says in 1972, it's a bit way back, when he was a busboy, the busboys and the waiters and the Kutchers had a tightly knit group. He says, except there was one person that was a bit surly. That's an understatement. It was a waiter about 70 years old, and they never heard anything from him but grunts and snarls. And he never talked to anybody. He always had a surly expression. He would be in the dining room 15 minutes before breakfast, and right after breakfast, after cleanup, he would retreat to his room, come for lunch, then retreat, come for dinner, retreat. He never said anything to anyone. He says he was about the most unfriendly person he ever saw. One day he asked the maitre d' about him, and the maitre d' said that he's a Holocaust survivor, and he lost a wife and children in the gas chambers. And all of a sudden, they looked at him completely different. That night, after dinner, the only thing they ever heard him do was listen to some staticky, broken television in the room. So one night, they knocked on his door, and they presented him. They were all poor. They pooled their tips, and they presented him with a new black and white television. They said the new color televisions was way out of their range, but they bought him a new black and white television. And the next morning, he came into the dining room, and the first time in decades, he boomed out with a smile, "Good morning" to everybody. And that's an idea of bakei shalom. People should pursue peace. They took the time to see and to find out about a person. People don't take the time. It is to make up with people is a time. It takes time, but it rewards in this world, in the next world. This is, by the way, a very timely discussion for before Yom Kippur. But Talmud Torah, how do we know Talmud Torah pays in this world and the next world? Ksiv ki hu chayecha v'orech yamecha. So it says in this world it's chayecha, and in the next world v'orech yamecha. And by the way, all the psukim of the Torah are double-edged. Drachei darchei noyam v'chol nesiva shalom. Orech yamim b'yamina b'smei lo yishav v'chavod. It says, Rifai si l'sharecha l'chol b'sarei marpei. All the psukim, because it's this world and the next world. Says the Gemora, but what about Shiluach HaKan? Why doesn't the Mishnah say B'Shiluach HaKan? B'Shiluach HaKan namiksiv l'man yitav lach v'arachta yamim. So it says it two-pronged, l'man yitav lach and v'arachta yamim. So lisnei namiha, it should count Shiluach HaKan also. Answers the Gemara, Tana v'Shayir. It leaves out some. And Einachanami, Shiluach HaKan is also included. It says the Gemara, that doesn't make sense. Tana Elu Devarim. Now, Elu Devarim is exclusive. These are the things. V'at Amir Tana v'Shayir, and you say it leaves out. So the Gemara now says, and it's very hard to see what the teretz really is over here. So let me explain it to you. The Gemara is going to say that it only counts things in our Mishnah where you're good to Hashem and also to people. Again, a timely lesson for before Yom Kippur, because we know we have to be thinking about, even though Yom Kippur is mechaper for the day itself, but for mitzvahs of between us and Hashem, but we need to make amends with other people, right? So the Mishnah only says things that are good with God and with people. So kibbud of aim is good with God and with people, because of course when we honor our parents, we're honoring God, who's the third partner in man. The same thing is true when we make peace with our fellow man. Hashem, who these people are his children, is happy. And the same thing is true acts of kindness. But Shiluach HaKan is not with our fellow man. Let's see it inside. Let's see how the Gemara presents this. I'm a Rav of Rav Idi Asberli. Rav Idi explained it to me. Imru Tzadik Kitayv. Praise the Tzadik. We're translating Imru from a lashon of praise, like it says, Hashem Hemarta Hayom. You should praise Hashem. So Imrit Tzadik Kitayv, praise the righteous for he's good. Ki free malalayim yoichelu, for he eats the fruits of his deeds. So the Gemara asks, what does it mean, a tzaddik that's good? Is there a tzaddik that's not good? What does it mean, a tzaddik toiv? Says Gemara, you're right. A tzaddik that's good with Hashem and his fellow man, zeh tzaddik toiv. Toiv l'shamayim v'ra l'brius, but if he's good with heaven, but he's not good with people, zeh tzaddik she'ena toiv. Now, what tzaddik eats pre-malalayim? That's a tzaddik toiv. And therefore, when is a person going to have peiros? That's only when it's both with Hashem and with his fellow man. Now you'll say, how is Talmud Torah with your fellow man? Right? Talmud Torah is only with Hashem. The answer is, it's not. Because when you learn Torah, you are able to influence other people. And the most simple pshat is that since the world doesn't exist without Torah, it wouldn't be for the Torah, the world wouldn't exist. So when you're learning Torah, you're doing good for the whole world. Similarly, woe to the wicked, evil person, because the deserts of his hand will be given to him. Is there a bad wicked person and a wicked person that's not bad? If he's bad to heaven and bad to mankind, that's a Rasha Ra. If he's just not a good Jew to Hashem, but he's good with people, says the Gemora, Haschus, merits, on a daf like this, we get a mitzvah for every word. It's very nice to come into Yom Kippur. A daf like this could have 3,000 words. And the Gaon says every word is a separate mitzvah saseh. I pointed out that we won't live to have 3,000 afikonos. And we won't live to have 3,000 Yom Kippurs. But we learn this daf, we get 3,000 mitzvahs, and they're not just any mitzvahs. You know, Berish says he's picky. He doesn't want just any mitzvahs. It's a mitzvah that's shakal k'neged kulam. Talmud Torah is k'neged. So if you had a question of whether this is a good use of your time, you shouldn't question it. I'm getting a crackly sound on this mic all of a sudden. I'm wondering if my beard is touching the mic too much. Beard interference. Haschus yesh la keren v'yesh la peres. Merits, there's principle and there's dividends. Shenemar imru tzadik kitayv ki pri malaleim yochelu. They'll eat the fruits of their actions. Aveira yesh la keren is only a principal punishment, v'ein la peres, but there's no dividends of punishment. Shenemar oila rasha ra ki gmul yadav yasalai. We only pay exactly what he did. Ay ve'lamani mekayim v'yochelu mepri darkam. They will eat the fruits of their behavior, and for their plotting, they will be filled with punishment. So here it says they'll eat from pre-dakram. So the Gemara says, well, that's different. A sin that bears fruit, yesh la peres. But if it doesn't bear fruit, ein la peres. What's a sin that bears fruit? A sin that bears fruit is somebody introduces his friend to a sinful site on the computer. And then that person becomes addicted to sinful sites. So that's a sin that produces fruit. Here's a person, sits down next to someone and starts talking to him during davening. And he gets this person into the habit of talking during davening. That's a sin that produces fruit. Here's a person that tells to someone, come with me to Atlantic City. You got to see it. It's so exciting. He takes that person to Atlantic City, and then that person becomes a wretched gambler. That's a sin that produces fruit. Machshava Torah mitzvah l'maisa. A good thought, Hashem considers it as an action. Shenema oz nidbaru yirei Hashem. Then God-fearing people will speak Ishel Re'eyu Vayakshev Hashem V'Yishma, And Hashem hearkens and listens. Because Sefer Zikaron Lefanav, He writes a book of remembrance, L'Yirei Hashem, for those that fear Hashem, U'L'Chayshvei Shemai, and those that think about His name. Mayu L'Chayshvei Shemai. Even if a person planned to do a mitzvah, but he became an einus. The Torah considers it as if he did it because machshava toiva HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzaref l'maisa. They say over that the Chayzim Lublin was a moyel, and they asked the Heilige Chayza what was the best milah he did. And he gave a very strange answer. He said the best milah that he did was the milah that he missed. So they asked him, what do you mean? So he said that he was supposed to be a mile, and then there was a blizzard, 3 feet of snow. He tried to go, and he couldn't get there. So at the end, somebody else did it. He said he wanted to do it, and he tried valiantly to get there. So Hashem considered it as if he did it. But if Hashem considers it as if he did it, how? He takes an average of all his milas? No, Hashem considered it as if he did it the best way. So the best milah he ever did was the one that he missed. Machshava ra, a bad thought, ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzaref l'maisa. Hashem doesn't count. Shenema oven imra'isi beliba, a sin, if you see it in my heart, lo yishma Hashem. Hashem doesn't listen. What I do it says in Nimevi Elam Azer Ra, I will bring against this nation evil pre-machshavaisam, the fruits of their thoughts. So you see a person is punished for his thoughts. Says, well, that's thoughts that are brought to fruition. If you plan to do a mitzvah and you carried it out, machshava she'oisa pri, if you carried it out, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzaref l'maisa, then Hashem also punishes you for the plotting. Machshava she'ein ba pri, but if you backed out and you didn't do it, ain't HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzaref l'maisa. Ay ve'elha dichsiv l'man tzvaises beis Yisrael b'libam, that he holds them accountable in the heart. That's thoughts of idolatry. Whoever denies idolatry and stays away from idolatry, it's as if he keeps the whole Torah. In other words, and therefore the reverse is true, that if you do idolatry, it's as if you deny the whole Torah. So over there, even thoughts of idolatry are forbidden. We should point out that also sins of promiscuity, thoughts of promiscuity are also forbidden. It says here, Hure Aveira, Kasha Me Aveira. Thoughts of sin are even harsher than sin. As we welcome in Abe Arbach. Abe, it's good to have you on this Erev Yom HaKippurim. Lifnei Hashem Titaru, we purify ourselves before we go to Hashem. I want to remind everybody that it is a very big mitzvah to eat today. Kala oichel chiva asiri, whoever eats on the knife, it's keilu isana chiva asiri. It's a good day. Thoughts of dieting should be not on our mind on these days. Of course, if you're diabetic, if you have problems, you don't want to get health problems. But it's a great day to eat. First of all, when we eat today, we're fattening the korban. Because it says that the miyat chelav and the dam, the diminishing of our fat and our blood should be considered like a korban from our fasting. And when do we fatten the korban? Now, when we eat. We're also eating in order to be able to fast better. Hechsher mitzvah k'mitzvah. Furthermore, we're eating to celebrate the giving of the Luchas Shniyos, which was on Yom Kippur. The second tablets were given. We can't have a meal on Yom Kippur, so we eat a meal in the night, a meal in the day, in order to celebrate the giving of the Torah. Tonight, of course, is also a big mitzvah to eat because of Shalashud, Malav Malka, and also for strengthening the luz bone. So it's a big night of eating. Amar, the Rav Huna. You know what kind of thinking is forbidden? What's forbidden is when we do mitzvahs repeatedly. When we do mitzvahs repeatedly, then it becomes in our mind like it's permitted. Says the Gemora, when a person does a sin and repeats it, hutrulai. So the Gemara says, hutrulai, so you think he thinks it's mutter? Elanas is like after he doesn't realize he's doing anything wrong anymore. I always give an example. A person comes to shul, and afterwards they asked him, how's the davening? Oh, a great davening. Wow, the Bali Tefillah were nice, and the laning was good. He didn't make a mistake. It's truthfully, when he was davening the entire morning, he didn't speak to Hashem once. But he got used to davening that way. To him, there's nothing wrong. It was a good davening. It's better for a person to do a sin in private, rather not to desecrate heaven in public. So if a person has to sin, so said Hashem, Ish gelulav lechu ivdu. Each man his ish gelulav lechu avodu. Go, each man his idolatry he should go and serve. V'achar im einchem shomei eloi. And if you don't listen to me anyway, but v'eshem kodshi lo yisachal, but don't desecrate my name. So if a person has to sin, let him go somewhere where nobody knows him and sin. If somebody sees his passion is getting the better of him, let him go to a place that they don't recognize him. He should dress very humbly, black, and cover himself in black. First of all, that might humble him and might get him to change his course. But if not, nobody will recognize him. And succumb to his temptation, but don't do it where people see him. Says the Gemora, so that means that he's more worried about people than worried about what God sees. Whoever is not worried about Hashem, it's better that he didn't come into the world. That's somebody that gazes at a rainbow. You're not supposed to gaze at a rainbow. In a rainbow, it says, is the presence of the Shekhinah. And lo yirani adam v'chay, you're not supposed to gape at a rainbow. Rabbi Yosef Amazel v'avera b'seis. That's somebody who does a sin in hiding. Because by doing a sin in hiding, he's showing that he's worried about people, but he's not worried about Hashem. So you see, it's not a good thing to hide. It says, if he could subdue his yetzer, but he doesn't, and sins in private, that's a bad thing. But if it's out of control, then at least don't create it. Hashem. Tanan Hashem. Ein makifin b'chil Hashem. Hashem doesn't give credit when it comes to Chil Hashem. And that's true, whether he does it unwittingly, whether he does it willfully. My ein makifin. It means that Hashem doesn't act like a storekeeper. A storekeeper will extend credit. Okay, you'll owe it to me. But Hashem doesn't extend credit. He doesn't wait. He punishes right away. Chil Hashem is a very serious business. We have to be very careful when it comes to Chilul Hashem. If his deeds were equal, but there is a sin of Chilul Hashem, machras, the sin tips the scale to his demerit. Chilul Hashem, here again, right before Yom Kippur, when we talk about things that we have to work on, especially we who live in fairways and we're surrounded by goyim from every which way, we have to make sure not to make a Chilul Hashem. Tan Rabbana. La'olam yira adam atzma kilu chetzye chayev v'chetzye zakeh. A person should always, it's amazing that the world is learning this right before Yom Kippur. It's amazing. Mamish amazing. A person should view himself as if he's mamish half and half. Also mitzvah achas, if he does one mitzvah, here we are, we're B'asayis Yimei Tshuva, where the Rambam says if we're a Beinani, we have to tip the scales. So the Gemara is telling us. Also mitzvah achas, if you do one mitzvah ashrav, shechriyo atzma l'kaf schus, he tilted himself to the side of merit. Of aveira achas, if he does a sin, oiloi, woe to him, shechriyo atzma l'kaf chayva, he tips himself to the side of guilt. Shenemar, v'choy teyechad, one sin, yavet toiva harba. He'll lose a lot of good, because if it's the one that tips the scale, B'shvil chet yechidi, that tips the scale, shechata, oivin mimenu toivus harba, he loses a lot, because he had a lot of schusim, but he tipped the scale to the side of guilt. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon ups the ante. He says not only that, the whole world could be in the balance. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon Aymelafisha Olam Nidai Nacharubai. The world is judged after the majority. Also mitzvah achas, if he did one mitzvah, let's say the whole world was 50-50, if he does one mitzvah, ashrav shechriyas atzmai v'skol ha'olam l'kafschos. This is the way the person should look. He says, you know how, I'm not a nothing. Many people think they're insignificant. You're not insignificant. You might tilt the scale of the whole world. To the sides of demerit. Loses toiva harba. Because of one sin that the person did, the whole world loses good. Reb Shimon Harba, Reb Shimon Yechayimer, afilu tzaddik gomer kol yomav. Even a perfectly righteous person, Umorad ba'achrayna, but he rebelled at the end of his life, ibed eser rishonos. He could lose everything. It says, Al tamim ba'atzmacha ad yom ha'isra, never trust yourself. Tzidkas HaTzadik, the righteousness of the Tzadik lo yitzazilenu b'yom peshay, will not save him in the day of his sin. And the other way around is also true. Afilu rasha gomer kol yomav, even if he's completely wicked all his days, also tshuva b'achrayna, and he did tshuva the last minute, ein maskirin lo yishuv risha, they don't mention his wickedness. Shenema v'rishas harasha lo yikasha ba b'yom shuvay merisha. It's not counted. So the Gemara says, why should he lose everything? He should be like, even if it's such a big sin, it should be 50-50. No, it's talking about a person where he regrets the good that he did. Never regret the good that you did. Now again, I can't think of a more important Gemara to learn in the last day of the year. Because the last day of the year, we could correct the whole year. That's what it says, the last day. It's not the last day of the year, but it's the last day before the Chasima. We could correct the whole time. A person regrets what they did and thinks that he's going to be better. He could correct everything. It can make such a difference. Learning to be Mekayim the Mitzvah in Bartabam, says the Heilige Mishnah. Whoever learns Chumash, Mishnayos, and is an ethical person. Yes, Rambam says this means he's Ma'urav v'mabrius. He's pleasant with people. He's a mensch. He has that triple cord of Chumash, Mishnayos, and pleasantness. He won't quickly sin. The triple cord will not unravel. Whoever is not learning Chumash, Mishnayos, and is not a mensch, Einoi min hayishuv. He's not fit for society. Society would be better off without him. Amar Rebbe Elazar b'Reb Tzadik, L'ma tzadikim nimshalim ba'olam hazeh. What is a basically righteous person compared to in this world? A basically righteous person. Le'ilan shekuloi oimed b'makayim tara, to a tree that's in a place of holiness. V'noifei noitel l'makayim tumah. Some branches, some lone branches, go out to a place of tumah. That's a tzaddik. He's basically doing mitzvahs. He has a sprinkling of averis. Niksas noifei, if you prune the branches in the makam tumah, then kulay aymed b'makayim tara. Then the whole tree is in a place of tara. Adam eitz asada. Person is compared to a tree of the field. So when a person, he has a tzaddik who is primarily righteous and has some sins, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mevi yisurim al tzaddikim b'olam hazeh. He brings suffering to tzaddikim in this world, kadei sheyirshu olam haba, that they should inherit the afterlife. Shenemar v'yorei mitzar, your initial will have distress or be small. V'achrischa, but afterwards, in the next word, yishgamai, it'll be very great. V'lama risham daim ba'olam hazeh. And what are the wicked like in this world? Le'ilan, to a tree, shekula yaimid b'makayim tumah. It's completely in a place of tumah. V'noifei noitel l'makayim tara, and it has a few branches in a pure place. Niksas noifei, if you cut off the branches, kula yaimid b'makayim tumah. It's all in a place of tumah. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu mashpil lehem toivel u'risham b'olam hazeh. He grants good to the wicked in this world, kidei l'tordan olarishan l'madrega achroina, in order that they should be banished in the next world to the lowest level, to the Sheol in Gehenim. Shenema yesh derech yosher l'fnei ish. He has upright, looks upright, v'akarisa, but afterwards his darkei maves. Now here's a famous discussion that the rabbis had in the privacy, in the think tank of the attic of Beis Nitza Belud. Ukvar ha'ya Rabbi Tarfim Zekein Mesubin Ba'aliyas Beis Nitza Belud. Nishalo she'ela zu b'fneim. They had an interesting shayla. Talmud gadol or ma'aseh gadol? What's better, learning or action? Nana Reb Tarfim Lama ma'aseh gadol. Action is bigger to fulfill the Torah. Nana Rabbi Kiva Vama Talmud gadol. Learning is bigger. Nenu kulam v'imru Talmud gadol shah Talmud mevi lidei ma'aseh. Learning is greater because learning brings to action. So Taisus over here learns in one shot that this means that Taisus says that this means that initially when a person doesn't know, he should learn. Because lo yama oretz chasid, ein bur yireichei. So you have to learn in order to know what to do. You're trying to keep not speaking lashon hara, but you don't know halachas of lashon hara. You're trying to keep Shabbos, but so the first thing is you have to learn. So gadol ha-talmud she'talmud mevi lidei ma'aseh. After that, when you already learn everything, then ma'aseh is gadol. That's one pshat. If you look at Taisvis, if you look at the first Taisvis on the Amid, about 6 lines from the end of Taisvis, Taisvis says, "V'yesh mefarshim, the Adam shaloi lamad adayin." We didn't learn yet. Obali malechim yilmad tchila yasik b'maisa. If you should learn or do action, I'm in limad tchila. Lefi she'ein amoritz chasid. Amoritz can't be a chasid. Aval adam shilamad kvar Hamaisa toiv yosim aliman. Doing is more than a learning. Taisus earlier says, Taisus gives another pshat a little higher up. Lemigma ledidei, learning for yourself, vaday maisa adif. Avalag mure achrina, but to teach others, vaday adif tvei memaisa. That's another chiluk that Taisus makes. To teach others, that's much more than action, because the teaching of the others is also the action. Says the Gemora, this really, we need to talk more about this. This deserves a share on its own. Tanya Rabbi Yosi Omer, if you want to know great accomplishments, Tanya, Rabbi Yosi Omer, Gadol Talmud, great is learning, Shekodam Lechala Arba'im Shana. The mitzvah of separating challah was given as soon as we entered into Eretz Yisrael. The Torah was given 40 years before that. So 40 challah, which is a very great thing. Reishis Arisei Seichem, and there's a medrash that says, "Bereishis bara lekim b'shvil challah shenikra reish," a very great thing. But Torah is greater than Hafrashas challah because it's given 40 years before. The Trumas and the Meisers, it's greater than Trumas and Meisers. Trumas and Meisers are only after the land was divided 14 years later. So that's 14 plus 40 is 54. That's Kamishim V'Arba. Now, once they divided the land, then they kept 7 years and they did Shemitah. So that's 7 plus 54, that's 61. So it's greater than Shemitah because its Torah was given Shishim V'Achas 61 years before. Yovel is 50 plus 54. 54 was the first Shemitah, so that's 50 plus 54 is 104 years. L'yovis mea v'shosh. So the Gemara says, why 103? The 50th year is 154. Mea v'shosh, mea v'arba avyan. He says, no. When you free the slaves, they're freed in the beginning of the Yovel. So that's at the end of 49 years. Kesavar Yovel mitchilas hayom mishamet. It relinquishes the slaves and the debts at the beginning. So that's 103 years from after the Torah was given. Kashem shalimid kaidim lamaisa, just like the responsibility to learn comes before action. Kach dinoi kaidim lamaisa, so also its punishment comes before punishment for mitzvahs. Kidirav Amnuna, the Amar Rav Amnuna ain't chilas dinoi shel adam. A person is first judged ela al divrei Torah, on matters of Torah. Shenemar poiter mayim. The way we excuse ourselves over mayim is a mayim ela Torah. Reishis medain. That's the first thing we're judged about. Ukeshem shedinoi kaidem lamaisa. Just like its punishment is before mitzvahs. Its reward also is before mitzvahs. Hashem will grant you the lands of the nations. And the toil of the nations you'll inherit. And if you remember, we said Yishmeru means learning. Tishmon zu mitzvah. And you keep my Torah, you keep my mitzvahs. Now, this is the reason why, unfortunately, you'll see in life that many people do a lot of mitzvahs, but they don't learn a lot of Torah. It's really strange. The Talmud Torah is Keneged Kulam. Uvasarasa yege yoimam v'loila. Why do people don't have a very big budget of the pie of their time on learning? Why not? The answer is because the Yetzer Hara will let us do all kinds of things as long as we don't learn. Because Barasi Yetzer Hara, Barasi Torah Tavlin. Torah is the nemesis of the Yetzer Hara. So the Yetzer Hara will work on Torah more than on anything else. Beware of that. Now the Mishnah says, Kol she'eino loy b'mikra v'loy b'mishnah v'loy b'derech eretz. If a person doesn't have it, he's eino min hayishav. Amar Reb Yochanan apostle le'edus, and such a person is banned from testimony. Because such a person, if he doesn't care what people think about him, he's not going to be embarrassed to perjure himself. Tan Rabbanan, ha'eichel b'shuk, somebody eats in public. He feeds his face in public. He doesn't have any shame. Harized doima lekelev, he's like a dog. V'yeshaim in puzzle edus, because he doesn't have a sense of shame. Amar Avidi ba'avan halacha ki yeshaim. The halacha is like the yeshaim. Now we're just going to pause a minute, Rabbi Isai, just to change over the channel here.